Yeah. Player T, that's me. Hollywood in the hood.
We're very happy to have them, very influential in the community. They're all about uplifting the black community, uplifting humanity, period. And they have true principles and values. You know, a lot of people like to call them old school, but we need that in this present time. And so we're glad to have, Brother Roland right here, Minister Brother Roland right here from the Nation of Islam. And we have Dr. Reverend Albert Sampson from Carver, George Washington Carver Farms right here with us. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Thank you, brother.
Appreciate it. Now, Brother Roland, you brought this esteemed guest here with you today, to have the theology to have the spirituality that you have. Right, and to combine forces with someone like Dr. Sampson and his theology, how big is that to cross those lines and work together for the common good of the people?
Well, it's not a big thing at all, because when you believe in God and you recognize the divinity of God and the true spirituality of God, you recognize that God speaks to all humanity in different ways and different forms. And what you try to do is try to bridge that gap. And when you bridge the gap, you realize that you're all hearing the same thing. You all believe in the same thing. And once that's understood, then a friendship and a fellowship can be developed. Right. And that's how that happened.
Well, it seemed like it came a long way, because I can remember the days where, the Nation of Islam and maybe even a guy whom you looked up to, Dr. Martin Luther King, maybe they didn't have such good relations early on, and it took a while for them to mesh and things of that nature. Did you ever think it would get to this point where you would actually be working with constituents across lines?
Well, there was never any conflict between two brothers who came out of Georgia. One named the Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
okay,
and the other one named Martin Luther King.
Okay.
In fact, it was the meeting that happened, which is on the pages of history, where when Dr. King was in Chicago, I was one of his staff people when he came to Chicago, and he met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And the genius of the meeting was that they didn't tell the white folks what the meeting was about. But he came back and said that he was a great man.
That's what
that was
Dr.
doing,
Martin Luther King said.
Yes, sir. That was doing great things. Fast forward, in 1975, I took a church in Chicago. In 1978, I had a meeting with a great man named Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's from Massachusetts, and I'm from Massachusetts. Right. He went to school at Winston-Salem in North Carolina. I went to school at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Right.
He is to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad what I am to Martin Luther King. So when the Million Man March occurred, I was one of the speakers in 1995. And then January of 1996, he personally called me. Usually it would be one of his staff people, but he called and said, "Brother, let's go to 18 African countries. I've gotten the invitation extended to us, and I want you to go with me."
Wow.
So for the first time in the history of our people, two disciples born from two men from Georgia. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad was from Sandersville, Georgia, and Martin King was from Atlanta, Georgia.
Let me ask you, when you first got wind of the Million Man March and that opportunity there, and being a part of history like you have been with the March on Selma,
sure,
what were the similarities and what were you thinking when that came across your mind?
Well, the genius of Minister Louis Farrakhan is he knew all of us in the movement. And out of my church in 1978, he was building the Nation of Islam. So I would get through with my worship service. I at that time was pastoring a church on the south side of Chicago. And I would get through with my worship service at 1 on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. He would come about 2 o'clock. And he would utilize my facilities. I gave him the keys, never asked him for the keys back.
Why though? Why would you do that, knowing that you were of a different teaching? You know.
Oh no, brother. Oh no. He named his mosque after Mary Ann,
Okay.
which is the mother of Jesus.
Okay.
And in the Quran, it's the only book that has a whole chapter on Mary, the mother of Jesus. And when he purchased the mosque in Chicago on 76th and Stony Island, he had Prince Asiel from the Hebrew Israelites. And because I'm one of the biblical scholars for the original African Heritage Bible, it was the Hebrew Israelites that went with where we went to Israel and Dimona, and the brothers knew the scholarship and knew the real story inside of the Old Testament.
Right.
And because I was a Christian, and Kane Hope Feldner, who was the professor at Howard University School of Divinity, well, when we were on Stony Island, Prince Asiel represented the Hebrew Israelites, I represented the Christian, and Minister Louis Farrakhan represented the Muslim, and we all three of us put our hands together and turned the crescent on to Mosque Mariam. And the reason for that is all of the biblical information is in now. We can't be tricked. Moses was not Charleston Heston.
Right.
Elizabeth Taylor was not the Queen of Sheba.
Right.
And Jesus was not born in Europe with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right. You kind of look like me. Woolly hair, bronze feet.
That's right. He was born in Northeast Africa,
Right.
up the street from Ethiopia, around the corner from Egypt.
Okay.
So we all now know that the Hebrew Israelites on one side, the Islamic religion on the other, and the Christian religion are three great rivers coming out of Mother Africa.
You had to be excited for that opportunity because that's the growth of humanity right there.
Well, but it's also the legacy of our history as a people. And there's a man that you know of named Dr. Benjamin Mays who wrote his PhD on the subject of the Negro's God. And what he found in his dissertation, is that there was a deep similarity between not only all of the religions, but here's the other thing he found, that the Roman Greco world had all of the intelligentsia, the Aristophanes, Socrates, all of Aristotle, all them boys. But the Greek and Roman world disappeared. And all that was left right to this day is the power of the spirituality of Africa. So it was natural for Brother Roland and I, for Brother Minister and I, to become one because Mother Africa gave us birth as the sons of the heartbeat of our culture.
Well, tell us about how the SCLC came about and what was the meaning behind, those forces come together, those leaders in the Christian, Southern Christian area to come together and form that body.
Well, Martin King had a symbol for SCLC called Redeem the Soul of America. It was a sign that hung outside of SCLC at 334 Auburn Avenue. There are several types of churches in the black community. First church is called the Entertainment Church, where they jump up and down with the Holy Ghost on Sunday.
Sure.
And people live with Casper the Ghost on Monday.
Right.
The other church is called the Containment Church, where all the intelligentsia is locked up in the church. And then the third church is called the Prosperity and Pain, where people ride in and ride past the problems of our people, do their little worship, ride in, ride out. But Martin's church was called the Church of Liberation. When Martin was alive, he took the church out the church into the community. And when Martin got assassinated, the church left the community and went back to church. And the genius of Martin King was that he proved that you could be in the church. Slaves was in the church. They were saved, sanctified, and full of the Holy Ghost, but they were still slaves. It wasn't until you went to church that Martin King redefined that you're not Richard Wright's The Outsider. You're not Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man. You're not James Baldwin, Nobody's Knows My Name. You're not Franz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth.
Right.
You're Claude Brown's Man-Child in the Promised Land. You're Maya Angelou's I Rise, I Rise, I Rise.
Right.
So the mystery of this man was that he could be in Birmingham, Alabama, and you would go to the church and hear him preach. And he had such a spiritual African connectivity that would make you go outside the church and let the dogs bite you and let the water holes baptize you, where there was something that he struck deep down inside of all of us, where we publicly took the position, kill us or let us go, which is what gave birth to the movement and redirected black folks' behavior. Now we're struggling with taking the church out the church back into the community in order to help the brothers and sisters from the demonic forces that are messing with them. That's why the sister, I think it was Tamala Mann, said, I'm all churched out, but take me to the king.
Let me ask you, Brother Roland, why do you think that is with the youth? Why even in this day and time is the youth is having a hard time relating with the message of the church, but they're looking up to the entertainers, they're looking up to the sports figures and for guidance? Why do you think that is?
Well, the reason why is that because any young person that's coming in to the world and recognize the reality of what's going on, they're looking for substance and they're not looking for just a show. So therefore, when you look at the entertainer shows real substance. He takes his talent, and his talent is a gift and a skill they get from God, and there's a result from the talent and skill in terms of monetary value, economic value. In America, we're in a capitalist society. In order to live good and have the things that make life comfortable, you must have economics. You must have money. Right. And they see the results of the entertainer. They see the results of the sports figure. They see the results of any person that's making money, and they see the lifestyle that they can generate as a result of that. Right. Now, all human nature requires every person in their life look for something to make their life very, very comfortable. Right. And when you have those type of gifts and skills and talent, you can get comfortable. Now, any child knows that your knowledge comes first from your mother. It comes from the home, and the other institution that help build you is the school and then the church. Those three pillars, home, school, and church. Well, your mother gives you inspiration and guidance to go out and be a man and be a woman, all right? Then the school is supposed to give you education and bring out the gifts of God in you of what you was instinctively born with. The church then supposed to give you guidance from God to do what God has given you to do, just like in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, where God gave Adam the instructions to go replenish the earth and multiply, till the soil, feed seeds in the earth. Now, when the youth recognize that other people guide them, and all these things that naturally I'm supposed to possess has been cultivated, it has not been nurtured, and I'm in a position where I don't have anything, then it sits in anger, it sits in frustration, and in reality, the youth now is angry at those three elements. The home, I didn't get it from mama, daddy, you didn't give me sufficient enough. The school, you missed out on me. And the church, you understand, should have been the last stronghold, the last point that gave me what I wanted. But on the other hand, when I see the church, I see the preacher, and most time, got the things that I don't have. And you selling a message that make you rich and keep me poor. So that's the reality. Because our children right now are highly educated, they're highly conscious, and they're highly knowledgeable. And they can look at things in a way and rationalize, right? And see the logic. And the logic of what's going on is not correct in their eyesight.